What's up, everybody? It's PJ the Great. I hope you're having a super beautiful day. And today is part 2 of that $320 Flippin gaming PC build. Now, in the first part, and if you haven't checked it out, I'll leave a link right up here somewhere so you can check that out. I went over all the basic parts and the build, and then I ran into an issue and I had another bad motherboard, but that has all been resolved and it's all put together, and I was able to do some tests on it. So that's what I want to share with you all today, is how the testing with gaming, and is it really worth to build this $320 gaming PC build today, February 2021. Now, this is a build that you can do as of right now with the parts. You have to put in a little legwork though, because specifically the Ryzen 5 2400G that I use in this machine, for some reason is selling higher than the Ryzen 5 3400G, which is also selling higher than retail price. So if you go on to AliExpress, you can find one. I mean, one that's reasonably priced, and reasonably I say it lightly because it's $130. It's the Pro version. It'll have better silicon in it, so that's the bonus with that. Supposedly you can't overclock those, but I have a Ryzen 7 Pro 1700 that I was able to overclock just fine. So this build wasn't meant to be a forever build by any stretch of the imagination. I put this together to show you that you can get gaming right now on a budget, and then it has a very good upgrade path. That's the reason why I chose the Ryzen platform instead of the Intel platform. I'm not either way. I do have an Intel machine, so the reason why I picked Ryzen is because of the upgrade path. Now let's talk about the gaming performance and what I saw, because I did state that you can play games 720p low all the way up to 1080p low without any problems, and it will be playable. So that will be 60 frames per second or higher, but some instances it will be a little bit lower than that, and I'm going to share that right now in this video. Now, a friend of mine, we were just joking about this. Every time I say the name of this game, I always want to call it Apex Theory because it's one of our favorite bands back in the day, but it's Apex Legends, and I tested out Apex Legends. I'm going to share the footage with you right now. I tried it out at a couple of different resolutions. First, I tried it out at 1080p low settings, and it was definitely playable, but it was a little jittery here and there, and playing a game like that, you do not want any jitters. So I tried to raise the resolution up a little bit, and I decided to go over to 900p, and it was a little bit smoother than 1080p at low settings, but it was still a little bit jitter here and there. I found that the sweet spot in this game was 720p low settings. I was consistently getting up to 60 frames per second, and it was smooth. And as far as the visual quality, it really wasn't that bad. 720p is really not that bad to play at, especially if you know it's going to be a temporary resolution until you're able to upgrade this thing. But 720p 60 frames per second was pretty great. Another thing to keep in mind too is that I was using screen recording software, which takes roughly around 5 to 10 frames per second away from your gaming. So you'll be able to add that on top of this. Apex Legends, almost said Apex Theory again. Apex Legends was definitely playable, and I would suggest on this particular build playing at 720p low settings. Next, we're gonna move on to the game that everybody loves to hate, and that is Fortnite, including myself. I played Fortnite one time and it wasn't for me, but just recently I got back into Fortnite and now I'm addicted to it. You can check out the previous stream that I did. I'll link it right up there if you want to check it out. Right up there. And you can check it out. I was streaming with my boy Rumham76. Anyway, I decided to test that out. I wasn't able to do a frames per second count on it, but I did put a cap of 60 frames per second on the gaming. I did try it at 1080p first, and then also I found that the sweet spot was 720p. The graphics look really good. The gameplay was smooth, so you could definitely play Fortnite on this machine at 720p low settings, and you'll get even more performance, as I mentioned, if you're not recording the screen like I was doing in this gameplay. But I would be comfortable playing Fortnite on this machine 720p low settings, and you'll get a very solid performance best out of it. So don't hesitate. You'll be able to do it on this machine, 720p, low settings, the Fortnite. And right around in that same family, we're gonna go into PUBG. Now, for some reason, when I was trying to screen record on this, I had to go to 720p low settings because 1080p was a no-go. For some reason, it cropped the screen on the recording. So if the playback looks a little bad on here, just keep that in mind. It really doesn't look that bad, but I had to stretch it out so you can see it. 720p low settings. Once again, I wasn't able to do a frames per second counter on this. I was just looking for playability, and a lot of people that's looking into a build at this price, they really don't care about frames per second. They just care about how well is it going to game, and it gamed pretty well at this resolution. Keep in mind, I was doing all these tests trying to play with a controller, and I cannot play with a controller anymore ever since I switched to keyboard and mouse. But I was doing it for this test, and like I said, it was pretty smooth sailing with it at 720p low settings. I would consider this playable on this machine. So if you want to get your PUBG on, you can get your PUBG on this build. And last, if you're a baller on a budget and you want to play those AAA titles, I threw in a test of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now, I ran this a couple of different ways until I found a sweet spot on this as well. I was at like 1080p, then I went to 900, and also in this game, I found that 720p low was the sweet spot, and I even lowered it from DirectX 12 to DirectX 11 and got a little bit more frames per second out of it. Right here, you'll see the benchmark going on, and it was smooth enough to play roughly around 30-40 frames per second. You can get down with that, especially in a game like this that really isn't that fast paced all the time like shooters are, and I would consider this a playable experience. So 720p low settings, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Don't hesitate to play it on this build because it should be able to handle it just fine. I love me some Tomb Raider. Okay, so those are the gaming benchmarks that I wanted to share. I didn't bother to do any other type of like benchmarks on this because I don't think this machine would have any problems doing like everyday tasks like surfing the web, checking email, stuff like that. I even think you can do some light video editing on this 1080p. Don't try to go any higher than that. So that's the reason why I didn't do any tests like that. Plus, I did title this a gaming build. So there are the gaming results. $320, I think, is really a good bang for your buck, especially these days when everything is raised sky high because everybody wants to get into PC gaming because we're pretty much still on lockdown due to this pandemic. Now let's talk about the upgrade path. That's what I spoke about in the beginning of this video. This is not a say all be all build and you can't do anything else to it. The upgrade path on this thing is phenomenal. That's the reason why I went with it. So I'm going to give you my suggestions on what you should upgrade first. I'm going to go in order to get this to a machine that you can really like and enjoy for years to come. So the first upgrade that I would do on this machine would be the RAM. I would definitely update the RAM first. Right now, as mentioned, it was 8 gigabytes in dual channel, 2666 megahertz. I would jump up to 16 gigabytes of RAM and up it up to at least 3000 megahertz for this particular build. Now, the performance that I went over in gaming, 720p low settings, when I use this chip, I was using 16 gigabytes of RAM and 3000 megahertz, and I was able to play in 1080p low settings without any issues. So the RAM is definitely holding this thing back from playing in 1080p. So that would be the first route that I would go. I would upgrade this thing to 16 gigabytes of RAM. Now, we only have 2 RAM slots on this particular motherboard, but that's not an issue. Just buy brand new sticks, take that 8 gigabyte kit out of there, throw it up on eBay or OfferUp, and make some of that money back. But that would be the first upgrade I would do. I would upgrade to more RAM. The next upgrade that I would recommend on this particular build would be picking up a graphics card. Now, we know how graphics cards prices are ridiculous right now. You can't even get your hands on NVIDIA 3000 series at a reasonable price. Same thing with AMD's new 6000 series. Now, if you're balling on a budget like this, you're not going to be willing to pay double retail to get one of those GPUs. Now, if those don't even like fancy you at all and you just want something that's going to give you better FPS, then I would recommend going up to something like on the AMD side. I would pick up an RX 570 or RX 580. Those are even inflated as well, but if you're willing to hop over to AliExpress, you can get those at a somewhat better price, and you'll have to wait like a month. But an RX 570 or RX 580 would be definitely a good upgrade for this particular build. The 4GB ones are the ones that are somewhat affordable. You move up to 8GB, you're going to be paying a lot. And not really that much, but more than what you should be paying for it. So if you want to get a graphics card that'll tide you over until you can get your hands on something better, then I would go that route. If you're team NVIDIA, then I would go something like a GTX 1060. Now those are going a little bit higher than the RX 570, but if you're a team NVIDIA, you're gonna have to pay that tax. I would go with a GTX 1060, but as I mentioned in the first video, this particular build with everything in it, if you're on team AMD, you can go as high as a RX 5600 XT and be fine. And if you're team green, you can go all the way up to 2060 KO, and this machine will be able to handle it just fine. So you can go that route if you find a good price on it, or you can go the lower routes as I mentioned. Okay, and the next upgrade that I would suggest for this machine is kind of iffy. It all depends on what type of person you are and what you're doing with this machine. Of course, we're talking about gaming here. In 2021, my personal opinion, 4 cores and 8 threads is more than enough for gaming. Some people may argue with that I've seen on YouTube, but 4 cores and 8 threads as of right now, I think it's just fine. But if you do want to jump up a Ryzen 5 2600 or a 3600, me personally, if you can get a 3600 for $199 or a little bit lower, go the Ryzen 5 3600 route. But you can also go 8 cores, 16 threads if you want to. You can get Ryzen 7 1700s at somewhat decent prices over on AliExpress. But if you're strictly a gamer, I would suggest the upgrade that you should do next is picking up a Ryzen 5 3600. Now you can go 8 core 16 thread on this A320 motherboard. Do I suggest it? You can do it. You could definitely do it, but don't go any higher than that. But I would say the sweet spot, especially if you're a baller on a budget, go with the Ryzen 5 3600 as your next upgrade after the RAM and the graphics card. Now this next upgrade is purely optional, but if you're fancy to this case, and to be honest with you, this case is actually growing on me. I don't know, for some reason it's like I like it now. I think it looks pretty cool, especially for the price. So if you're in that same boat with me and you're thinking that this case is just fine, I would upgrade the fans in it. I don't think the fans are of high quality. It's super quiet, but I think it's quiet for a reason. I don't know how much air these things are pulling in and out of the system. There's no rating on it, and the case like instructions didn't give any rating on the speeds. So if you're fancy to this case and you like it, especially when you throw in a graphics card and then maybe upgrade to a higher CPU, consider upgrading the fans on this. Now if you don't want to do that, that's fine. It should be fine the way it is. It does have 3 fans on it, so I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem, especially having that side fan over here that's going to be blowing cool air directly onto the GPU and the CPU. You can also move on to like a better case if you wanted to. That's last. As mentioned, I'm going in order, but those are 2 other options that you can go in order as well. Upgrade the fans on this if you fancy to this case. If you're not, skip upgrading the fans and just move on to a better case. One honorable mention that I will do on an upgrade for this in order is the power supply. Now you really don't have to worry about the power supply. It is a 450 watt bronze rated power supply, and the one that I suggested in the last video in the description was actually a 500 watt bronze. So I really don't think you need to upgrade the power supply. But if you want to get into those new NVIDIA 3000 series or the AMD 6000 series, then you're definitely going to want to upgrade the power supply on this. I will go up to 650, 700 watt power supply, get it 80 plus rated, and that would be an upgrade to consider. But like I said, if you're not interested in those cards and you take the upgrade path for GPUs, like I mentioned, this 450 watt power supply or the 500 watt that I suggested in the description will get you by just fine. All right, so that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comment section down below if you're going to attempt this build. I would love to hear about it once the project is all said and done, and even when you're preparing for it. I would love to hear about it and see what your thoughts are about it too. $320, I think is not a bad deal, especially during these times, and I think it will get you over just fine. And let's get into the title of the video. The reason why the word flipping is in it, because I intended to flip this PC build, and I did flip it. I had a friend of a friend that was interested in getting into a PC for gaming and other projects, and he bought it. He definitely bought it. So I was able to flip it in just a week's time. He already had his own case and his own power supply. This is just a prop. It's actually gutted. He picked it up yesterday. So that's the reason why the word flipping was in the title. It was not like kidding around way to throw in a cuss word without throwing a cuss word. My intent all along was to flip this, but my main intent was to help you guys and gals get into gaming on a budget during these times, and I hope you found this video useful. Hey, if you liked the video, do me a favor and give it a big old thumbs up, but if you hated it, you can give it a thumbs down. But no matter what you do, don't forget to click that subscribe button and click the bell right next to it so you'll be notified every time I upload new videos. And to all the people that have been leaving comments on my past ADHD videos and my vitamin D deficiency videos, I do plan on getting back into it. I've been slacking really bad on my second channel, which is ADHD Like a Boss. I'm really gonna get back into that. I really need to, because I've been neglecting that side of my life. So I'm gonna be getting back into that soon. But to everybody that's viewing here for tech and gaming streams, until I see you in one of those tech videos and gaming streams, this is PJ the Great saying Audi 5000G. Yeah, this case is growing on me. I think I might throw my test build in it.